Atlanta never sleeps, and last night the city's heartbeat stopped for one explosive moment. It started as a quiet evening at a celebrity charity mixer downtown red carpet event meant to celebrate unity in entertainment, but within minutes it spiraled into chaos. Cameras flashed, security scrambled, and onlookers gasped as Tamar Braxton was rushed to the hospital following what witnesses describe as a violent clash with love and hip-hop stars Yandy Harris and her husband, Mendeecees. Nobody saw it coming. Tamar arrived radiant, her gold gown catching the light like a flame. Yandy, cool and collected, posed for photos nearby with Mendeecees, the pair smiling as though nothing in the world could touch them. But beneath that glittering surface, tension had been simmering for weeks. Rumors of betrayal, a business deal gone wrong, and quiet resentment between the stars had been circulating through Atlanta's tight celebrity circles. It was only a matter of time before the pressure burst. The first sign of trouble came when Tamar allegedly confronted Yandy near the VIP lounge. Eyewitnesses say voices rose above the music. A source close to the event claims Tamar's tone was sharp, accusing Yandy of crossing a line. Yandy's reply was swift and cold. "You don't know what you're talking about." Mendeecees, standing just a few steps away, tried to intervene, but his presence only fanned the flames. "Don't get involved, Mendeecees," Tamar reportedly shouted. What happened next had people diving for cover. Glasses shattered. Someone screamed. Security rushed in as the confrontation turned physical. Several guests later described hearing Tamar cry out before collapsing, her friends shouting for help. Within minutes, paramedics arrived, escorting her out through a side exit as cameras continued to roll. Clips of the chaos flooded social media before the night was over. Hashtags like #Tamar Braxton and #ATL clash trending worldwide before sunrise. By dawn, speculation had consumed the internet. Fans were horrified. How did it go from business beef to hospital drama? One user posted. Another wrote, "I knew something was off between them at that last event." Reporters swarmed Grady Memorial Hospital, trying to confirm Tamar's condition, while Yandy and Mendeecees reportedly left the venue under police escort. But behind the headlines, questions linger. What really sparked the fight? Was it a misunderstanding, or something deeper? Something the cameras weren't meant to catch? And perhaps, most shocking of all, could this violent encounter expose long-hidden secrets between these Atlanta power players? Stay tuned, because this story isn't just about a celebrity argument, it's about pride, loyalty, betrayal, and the dangerous cost of fame. When the truth comes out, it may change everything we thought we knew about Tamar Braxton, Yandy Harris, and Mendeecees. Atlanta woke up to a storm of whispers, and every one of them had the same name on their lips: Tamar Braxton. By sunrise, her team had locked down the hospital. Her phone was switched off, and fans gathered outside with posters and confusion written across their faces. Nobody knew what had really happened inside that charity event, but everyone knew it was bad. The internet was already spinning its own stories, and every version seemed wilder than the last. Some said it was jealousy, others said betrayal, but deep down, everyone felt this wasn't just another celebrity argument. This was personal. A friend of Tamar's, who didn't want to be named, told reporters she'd never seen Tamar that shaken before. She kept saying, "They crossed me, and they know what they did." It wasn't the tone of someone angry, it was the tone of someone hurt. That's what had people talking. Because Tamar Braxton had been through public heartbreak, business disputes, and even reality TV explosions before, but this was different. This was family deep, industry deep. While Tamar was being treated inside, Yandy and Mendeecees were seen outside the venue surrounded by flashing lights and security. Yandy tried to keep her head high, but witnesses say her hands were trembling. Mendeecees stayed silent, one hand on her shoulder, guiding her toward their car as the crowd shouted questions. "Yandy, what happened? Did you hit her?" She didn't answer. She just turned away, tears streaking her makeup. Inside the hospital, Tamar's sister Toni arrived, her expression unreadable, walking straight past cameras with her head down. One nurse whispered to another, "That's her sister. She hasn't said a word since she got here." Minutes later, Tracy and Tawanda followed, their energy tense, their faces pale. This wasn't just a celebrity scandal anymore. It had become a family emergency. The doctors kept the details private, but one thing was certain: Tamar wasn't leaving anytime soon. Rumors began to spread that she'd fainted after a heated confrontation turned violent. Fans wanted answers. The Braxton family wanted peace. And somewhere between those two demands, the truth began to take shape. A source close to the event claimed that earlier that night, before the chaos, Tamar had been overheard on a call, pacing near the hallway of the VIP lounge. I'm done protecting people who don't deserve it, she said, her voice sharp but trembling. If they think they can keep using my name, they're wrong. Moments later, Yandy and Mendeecees walked in, unaware of what was waiting for them. They greeted her politely at first. Cameras caught the three of them exchanging smiles, but the footage cut off before the conversation began. What the cameras didn't see was the shift in energy. Witnesses described how Tamar's face changed, how her eyes hardened the moment Yandy mentioned a new deal her company had secured in Atlanta, the same project Tamar had reportedly been negotiating for months. According to an insider, Tamar had introduced Yandy to one of her business partners earlier that year. She'd wanted to expand her brand into a lifestyle network, combining music, talk, and community outreach, but weeks later, she learned that the same partner had signed with Yandy instead. Betrayal, quiet, smiling betrayal, and tonight, it had all come boiling to the surface. You knew that was my idea, Tamar reportedly said, stepping closer. You smiled in my face, acted like you were helping, and then you went behind my back. Yandy tried to reason with her. It wasn't like that, Tamar. Business is business. But Tamar's tone grew sharper. No, see? That's the problem. Y'all keep thinking everything is just business until somebody gets hurt. People nearby said. Mendeecees tried to calm things down. Tamar, it's not that deep. Nobody's trying to play you. But that made it worse. Don't you talk to me like I'm crazy? She fired back. You don't know what I lost because of y'all. Voices rose, hands gestured wildly, and soon the music from the event couldn't drown them out. One security guard said it looked like Tamar tried to walk away, but Yandy followed, still explaining herself. That's when a drink was knocked over, someone slipped, and the whole scene turned into chaos. Nobody can agree on who pushed first. But one thing was clear. The argument had turned physical. The next few minutes were a blur. Guests backed away. Someone shouted for security. A loud crash echoed across the ballroom. I thought it was a gunshot, one guest told reporters later, but it was glass breaking. Tamar hit the floor, and everyone started screaming. Paramedics arrived quickly, but the emotional damage had already been done. Within hours, every gossip outlet had the story, though none of them matched exactly. Some claimed Tamar had fainted from shock. Others said she'd been shoved. One report even suggested Mendeecees had tried to separate them and accidentally made things worse. Nobody knew the truth. All anyone knew was that Tamar was in the hospital, and Yandy and Mendeecees were being dragged across every headline in America. On social media, the reactions were wild. Fans split into two camps, those defending Tamar, and those calling the whole thing a setup. She's always the target, one fan tweeted. They can't stand to see her shine. Another wrote, Yandy's not built for that kind of drama. She was probably defending herself. Hashtags flooded timelines, and within hours, the story had gone global. Back at the hospital, Tamar's phone lit up with missed calls from industry friends, journalists, and family. She didn't answer any of them. One nurse said she could hear Tamar talking softly through the curtain, her voice breaking. I trusted her. One really did. Tony sat by her bedside, holding her hand. You don't need to talk about it right now, she said gently. Just rest. But Tamar couldn't let it go. She took everything. Tony, my project, my friend, my peace. And now look. As the day went on, more celebrities started weighing in. K. Michelle posted a cryptic message on Instagram. Karma moves fast when your heart ain't clean. Fans immediately took it as a jab at either Tamar or Yandy, and chaos broke out in her comments. Meanwhile, Yandy's team released a short statement. Yandy is deeply saddened by the incident. She wishes Tamar a full recovery and hopes the truth will come out soon. It sounded calm, but insiders said she was furious behind closed doors. Mendeecees, usually the peacemaker, stayed quiet. People close to him said he'd been trying to convince Yandy to keep silent, warning her that every word could make things worse. We just need to let it breathe, he told her. If you start explaining, they'll twist it. But Yandy wasn't one to stay quiet for long. They're already twisting it, she snapped. And I'm not gonna let them destroy us. Meanwhile, producers from both women's reality shows saw an opportunity brewing. Phone calls were made, contracts reconsidered, and suddenly everyone wanted to capture the aftermath. One network insider admitted, we've never seen anything this intense. If they're willing to talk, the ratings will explode. But for Tamar, this wasn't a storyline, it was real pain. As night fell, she scrolled through her phone, reading messages from fans, sending prayers and others questioning her side of the story. She whispered to herself, they don't know what it feels like to be used. A soft knock at her hospital door startled her. It was her mother, Evelyn, standing with a look that could silence a room. Baby, What did you get yourself into this time? Tamar looked up, tears brimming. I didn't start it, Mama, I swear. Evelyn sighed and sat beside her. You don't always have to start it to get caught in the middle of it. Sometimes the devil just knows where to find you. Those words lingered in the air, heavy and true. Outside, the hospital hallway buzzed with reporters and security guards. But inside that room, Tamar faced a different kind of storm, the one that comes when you realize betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it wears a smile and says, it's just business. And somewhere across town, Yandy sat in her car with Mendeecees, scrolling through her own feed, watching her name burn across every platform. They're calling me a snake, she said quietly. Mendeecees rubbed his temples. You knew this would happen. You can't win against sympathy. Tamar's hurt, and the world loves a victim. Yandy shook her head. But I didn't do anything wrong. Mendeecees looked at her. That doesn't matter. What matters is what people believe. She leaned back, closing her eyes as a single tear slipped down her cheek. Then we need to make them believe something else. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the skyline, unaware that by morning, another round of stories would drop, new claims, new footage, and a new version of the truth that would pull everyone deeper into the storm. And this time, no one would be safe from the fallout. The next morning, Atlanta buzzed with the sound of gossip. Radio hosts replaying the shaky phone footage from the night before. Every talk show from New York to Los Angeles had the same opening line. What really happened between Tamar Braxton, Yandy Smith-Harris, and Mendeecees? The world was wide awake, and the story had already slipped out of control. Inside Grady Memorial, Tamar stared at the pale ceiling, her phone glowing faintly beside her. Tony had left to handle the press outside, and for the first time since the incident, Tamar was alone. She scrolled through her messages, some full of love, others cruel and sharp. One text from an unknown number stopped her cold. It read, "You thought you could play me. Now everyone will see who you really are." No name, no context, just that sentence. She deleted it, but her hands trembled long after. Meanwhile, Yandy sat in her office uptown, surrounded by publicists, lawyers, and assistants. Her coffee sat untouched. They're calling me violent, she muttered. One of her team members replied, the best thing we can do is stay calm. We'll release another statement this afternoon, something about forgiveness and unity. But Yandy's patience was wearing thin. Unity. She threw the first punch. And I'm the one being painted as the villain. This is ridiculous. Mendeecees paced near the window, watching reporters outside. We can't win by arguing. Let it fade. Tamar's hurt, and sympathy is her power right now. Yandy turned to him, eyes flashing. You were right there, Mendeecees. You saw what happened. She grabbed me first. He nodded. I know, but the truth doesn't trend. Drama does. By afternoon, a new clip surfaced online. A few seconds of grainy footage showing Tamar pointing at Yandy, her voice echoing through the room. You stole my deal, Yandy. Admit it. Though the video cut before the fight, it was enough to ignite another wave of chaos. Hashtags multiplied, and fan pages began dissecting every frame, every syllable. One slowed the footage down to analyze the expression on Yandy's face, declaring her guilty by energy alone. Back at the hospital, Tony entered Tamar's room, holding her phone tightly. Tamar, have you seen this? She asked. Tamar turned away, whispering, I don't care. Tony sat beside her. You do care. You always care. But listen, this is getting out of hand. You can't let the internet decide your truth. Tamar stared at her reflection in the window. What truth, Tony? People believe what they want. They always have. A few moments later, Evelyn entered the room. Calm but firm. Girls, we need to talk. Both sisters turned. Evelyn took a deep breath. I just got a call from an old friend in production. They say Yandy's planning to speak publicly, maybe even go on live tonight. Tony frowned. Oh no, this'll blow everything up. Tamar clenched her jaw. She wants attention. Fine, let her talk. I'll talk. That night, the internet was a battlefield. Yandy went live from her living room, tears streaming down her face as she spoke. I never wanted this, she said softly. Tamar and I have known each other for years. I love her like a sister. But what happened that night wasn't how it looks. I tried to calm her down, and it just got out of control. Mendeecees sat beside her, silent but visibly tense. The media's twisting everything, she continued. I've been called every name, but I'm not a fighter. I protect peace. And I pray for Tamar's recovery. Millions watched. Hearts flooded the comments. We believe you, Yandy, one fan wrote. Stay strong. Others accused her of playing victim. She's acting. One viewer said, look at her eyes. No tears. By the time she ended the stream, it had already gone viral. Tamar watched from her hospital bed, her expression blank. Tony tried to take the phone from her. "Don't do this to yourself," Tamar whispered. "She's performing." "Tony, she's always performing." But as the video replayed, her face began to harden. "She's lying." The next morning, Tamar's team arranged a private interview with a popular entertainment blogger. She wanted her voice out there. She wanted her side told. When the cameras started rolling, she spoke slowly but clearly. "I'm not here to fight anyone. I'm here because I was hurt, physically, emotionally, professionally. I trusted the wrong people. I brought someone into my world, and they betrayed me. That's the truth." The interviewer leaned forward. "So are you saying Yandy stole your business deal?" Tamar hesitated. "I'm saying that when I help somebody, I don't expect them to take what I built and call it their own." Within an hour, the clip was trending. The interview painted her as vulnerable, strong, and deeply wronged. Fans rallied behind her again, flooding her comments section with hearts and prayers. But the calm didn't last, because deep inside the entertainment world, new whispers started spreading, whispers that maybe the betrayal wasn't just about business. Maybe there was something else, something deeper. An anonymous insider claimed there had been private meetings between Mendeecees and one of Tamar's former managers. The rumor was that Tamar had confronted him months earlier about side deals that cut her out of profits. The story twisted fast, turning into speculation that Mendeecees had been advising her partner behind her back. Soon, online threads exploded with theories. Was Mendeecees double-crossing Tamar? Did Yandy even know? Yandy slammed her phone down in frustration. "They're dragging my husband into this now." Mendeecees exhaled. "This is what I meant. It's out of our hands now." But Yandy couldn't let it go. "They're making me out to be this manipulative woman who steals and lies. I've worked too hard for that." Mendeecees looked at her quietly. "Then maybe you should tell the truth. All of it." "The truth," she said. "The truth would ruin everything." Meanwhile, Tamar's sisters were growing worried. Tawanda told Tony, "She's getting obsessed. Every hour, she's online reading comments. She won't eat, won't rest." Tony nodded, rubbing her temples. "This isn't good. She's feeding the drama, and it's feeding her back." Late that night, Tamar sat by her window watching the city lights, a familiar ache in her chest. Her phone buzzed again, another message from that same unknown number. "You wanted the truth. Meet me tomorrow." No cameras, no team. Her pulse quickened. She hesitated for a moment, then typed back one word. "Where?" The reply came seconds later. "The lounge on Peachtree, 3 p.m. The next day, Tamar told no one. She signed herself out of the hospital against doctor's advice, threw on a hoodie and sunglasses, and slipped into the back seat of a waiting car. Her driver glanced at her through the mirror. "You sure about this, Miss Braxton?" She nodded. "Just drive." When she arrived, the lounge was nearly empty. A quiet hum of music played as she stepped inside. Her eyes scanned the room until she saw Mendeecees sitting alone in a corner booth. He looked up, surprised but not shocked. "You came," he said. Tamar's voice was low. "You texted me." He frowned. "No, I didn't." For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Realization dawned on both faces at once. "Then who did?" she asked. Before he could answer, a phone camera flashed from somewhere near the bar. Another, then another. Someone shouted, "They're meeting again." In seconds, half a dozen people had their phones out, recording. "This was a setup," Tamar whispered. Mendeecees cursed under his breath. "We need to get out of here." But before they could move, a familiar voice echoed from behind them. "I knew it." They turned. It was Yandy, standing at the entrance, fury in her eyes. "So this is what you've been doing? Sneaking around behind my back?" "Yandy, no," Mendeecees said, stepping forward. "It's not what it looks like." But Yandy wasn't listening. "Don't you dare lie to me." "Not again." "Again," Tamar repeated, stunned. "What are you talking about?" Yandy's voice cracked with emotion. "I trusted both of you. And now, in front of the whole city, you're making me look like a fool." The crowd had started whispering. Phones still pointed their way. Tamar's chest tightened. "Yandy, you don't understand. I didn't even know he'd be here." But the damage was already done. Yandy's face twisted with anger and heartbreak. "You always play innocent, Tamar, always. But you know exactly what you're doing." She turned to leave, her heels echoing sharply across the floor. Mendeecees called after her, "Yandy, please listen." But she didn't turn around. The door slammed shut, leaving a silence so heavy it could crush them both. Tamar sank into the booth, hands trembling. This just made everything worse. Mendeecees sat beside her, eyes dark. "Somebody's controlling this story, Tamar. And it's not us." Outside, flashing cameras caught Yandy walking to her car, her face streaked with tears. As the door closed behind her, she whispered to herself, "They wanted a war. They're about to get one." Night fell heavy over Atlanta, but the noise refused to die down. Every gossip page, every entertainment blog, every podcast had turned the Tamar and Mendeecees triangle into a full-blown circus. Words like betrayal, affair, and conspiracy flashed across timelines like wildfire. The footage from the lounge had gone viral, grainy clips showing Yandy storming in, Tamar's shocked expression, and Mendeecees trying to calm everyone down. To outsiders it looked like another reality TV explosion, but to the people living it, it was a storm swallowing everything they'd built. Tamar sat in her apartment, lights off, phone glowing in her lap. She couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed every frame, every headline. Braxton caught in Atlanta trap. Yandy confronts husband and rival. Mendeecees in secret meeting scandal. She rubbed her temples and whispered, "How did it get this far?" The answer came a few minutes later in the form of a phone call. Tamar said, a familiar voice, low and calm. It was Mona, the producer who'd worked with all three of them on previous reality projects. "I need to talk to you before this gets out of control." Tamar exhaled. "Too late for that, don't you think?" Mona replied, "Not if we play it smart. I know who set you up." Tamar froze. "What do you mean?" Mona's voice dropped. "Someone's feeding the blogs, leaking clips, arranging paparazzi, stirring the pot. It's not random, it's strategic." Tamar's stomach tightened. "Who?" There was a pause. "Someone close to both of you. And they're making sure this feud never dies because it's good for business." Meanwhile, across town, Yandy sat alone in her living room, scrolling through her phone. The comments were brutal. People calling her a liar, accusing her of sabotaging Tamar's career, and worse, rumors that she and Mendeecees were splitting up. Her heart pounded as she read one comment that said, "Yandy's just another reality queen who'll sell her soul for ratings." She threw her phone across the couch, breathing heavily. The front door opened. Mendeecees walked in quietly, holding a small bag of takeout. "You didn't answer my texts," he said. She looked away. "Why are you still talking to her?" He set the food down. "I told you, I didn't text Tamar. Someone set us up." Yandy scoffed. "You expect me to believe that? Cameras just happened to be there." "Really? Listen to yourself," he said, his voice rising. "You think I'd risk everything we have just to meet Tamar? What would I even gain from that?" Yandy stood up, tears filling her eyes. "You've been distant for months. Secret calls, late meetings, and now she shows up in the middle of it all. How do you think that looks?" He sighed deeply. "It looks bad, I know, but this isn't what you think. I've been trying to fix something that went wrong long before that night." She crossed her arms. "Then say it." "Fix what?" Mendeecees ran a hand over his face. "You remember when we invested in that Atlanta property deal last year? The one Tamar was connected to?" Yandy nodded slowly. "Yeah, what about it?" "The numbers didn't add up. I found out one of the partners was moving money around, using Tamar's name to sign documents she never approved. I've been trying to trace who did it. That's why I met her. Not because of you. Because someone's using all three of us as pawns." Yandy stared at him, her anger shifting to confusion. "So you're saying this whole thing, the fight, the leaks, it's part of something bigger?" He nodded. "Someone's making money off the chaos, and we're too busy fighting to see who's behind it." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Yandy sat down slowly. "If that's true, then we've been played." Back at Tamar's apartment, Mona continued, "Whoever's behind this wants to keep the feud alive. Think about it. Every headline makes you trend. Every video gets clicks. Someone's profiting off your pain." Tamar clenched her fists. "You think it's the network?" Mona hesitated. "I think it's someone who knows how to work the system. Someone who knows both your teams." The next morning, Tamar called Tony. "We need to talk," she said. "But not here. Somewhere private." Tony sighed. "This better not be another confrontation." Tamar replied, "It's not. I just need you to see something." They met at a quiet cafe outside the city. Tamar showed her a list Mona had sent to Mail's payment records, and timestamps from a media company that had released the first videos. "Look at the name attached," Tamar said. Tony squinted, reading the small print. "Are you sure this is real?" Tamar nodded. "It's one of Yandy's old publicists. The same one she fired last year." Tony leaned back, stunned. "So he's the one leaking everything?" Tamar nodded. "And he's been selling exclusive content to gossip sites, using both our names to stir attention." While Tamar and Tony pieced the puzzle together, Yandy received a similar message from a blocked number. It said, "You're being used. Check your old team." She frowned, recognizing the voice note attached. It was her former publicist, bragging to someone about milking this drama until it bleeds gold. Her blood ran cold. She picked up the phone and called Mendeecees. You were right, she said. It's someone on my side. He asked, who? She hesitated. My old publicist. He's the one leaking everything. Mendeecees replied. Then it's time to fix this. Together. Later that evening, Tamar agreed to meet Yandy in private for the first time since the fight. They chose a small studio downtown, away from cameras. Both women arrived tense, surrounded by their managers and security, but neither spoke at first. The silence stretched long and thin. Finally, Tamar broke it. You hurt me, Yandy. Yandy looked down. And you hurt me. I lost deals, followers, peace. I didn't deserve that. You think I did? Tamar snapped. My name's been dragged through the dirt. Everyone's calling me unstable again. Yandy sighed. We both got caught in something ugly. But I found out who started it. She slid her phone across the table, showing the recordings of her ex-publicist boasting about leaking false stories. Tamar stared at it, her expression softening. So it wasn't you. No, Yandy said quietly. And it wasn't you either. It was Haymand, whoever paid him. They sat in silence for a while, processing everything. Mendeecees leaned forward. The damage is done. But if you to go public with this, it can stop the bleeding. Tamar frowned. You want to go live? Again, Yandy nodded. This time, together. No drama. Just the truth. They agreed. By nightfall, social media exploded once again, but this time, it wasn't about conflict. It was about unity. Tamar and Yandy appeared side by side on Instagram Live, their expressions calm but tired. Tamar spoke first. We've both been through a lot. The past few days have been chaos. But we want to clear the air. Yandy continued. There were lies told, videos leaked, and stories spun to make us fight. We found out who was behind it, and we're taking legal action. We're not enemies. We're women who got played. Millions watched. Comments poured in, some supportive, some skeptical. They're faking peace for the cameras. One user wrote. Nah, this feels real, said another. But as the live continued, the tension between the two seemed to fade. They even shared a small laugh when Tamar joked, next time I throw a drink, it'll be in my own kitchen. For a brief moment, the internet saw something rare to women rising above chaos, choosing peace. But as the stream ended and the lights went out, the cameras caught something no one else noticed. Outside the studio, a black SUV idled. Inside, a man watched their live stream on his phone, smiling faintly before dialing a number. Yeah, he said. They think it's over. Let them. The voice on the other end chuckled. Good, keep them busy. We've got more to leak. And just like that, the calm before the next storm began. Before sunrise, the villa was quiet, but not peaceful. The waves hit the shore with dull rhythm, the kind that reminded everyone how small they were against what had just happened. Kirk hadn't slept. He sat out by the water, hoodie pulled over his head, notebook open beside him. The camera crew stayed back, filming from a distance. The red light on the lens blinked softly like a heartbeat. When Kendra finally came outside, she didn't speak right away. She just stood beside him, looking at the horizon, eyes tired but steady. You still write in that diary or whatever it is? She asked finally. Kirk didn't look up. Helps me think. You shoulda tried thinkin' before you ruined my life, she said, voice low. He turned slowly. You think I meant for any of this to happen? You always mean it, she said. You just don't mean the consequences. The camera zoomed closer as the conversation unfolded, raw and slow. Kirk rubbed his face. I lost myself in this show. Everything became about keeping up the image, being the strong one, the loyal one, and then when things started falling apart, I blamed everybody else. Kendra crossed her arms. So this your confession moment now? Kirk looked at her carefully. It's the truth, even if it's too late. She exhaled, her anger flickering between rage and grief. You don't get to say too late like it's a shrug. You made choices. I just lived through 'em. Kirk nodded slowly. I know, and I'm sorry. The words hung there. Not enough, but something. Inside, Jock watched from the kitchen window, talking to Scrappy. You see that, man? I hope it's real this time. Scrappy shook his head. Kirk say sorry every season, then do something wild again. Man don't learn. Jock sighed. Maybe he finally broke. Sometimes that's what it take. By mid-morning, producers called everyone together. They said it was time to shoot the final group scene before heading back home. Nobody looked ready. Mimi rolled her eyes. Final scene. This whole week been a scene. Erica nodded. And half the world already got opinions. They gathered in the lounge, everyone sitting awkwardly, waiting for someone to speak first. Kirk finally broke the silence. Look, I know ain't nobody trusting me right now, and I don't blame y'all. I did some dumb things. But I'm done hidin' behind pride. He looked at Jock. I accused you of something you ain't do. I let jealousy make me look stupid, and I'm sorry. Jock's jaw tightened. You almost ruined my name. Bro. Kirk nodded. I know. And I'll make it right. Kendra was quiet until Kirk turned to her. And you, he said softly. I dragged you through hell. Said things no man should say. But I never stopped lovin' you. I just didn't know how to show it without breaking you in the process. She looked at him, eyes glistening but hard. Love don't look like that, she said. Love don't tear you down to prove it exists. Kirk lowered his head. Maybe not, but I ain't askin' for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know, I see what I did. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the producers seemed hesitant to breathe. Finally, Kendra stood. I don't hate you, she said. I just can't do this anymore. She turned toward the door, pausing only once. You need to heal Kirk, but not with me. When she walked out, the room stayed silent. Kirk watched her go, his face unreadable. Jock stepped forward, putting a hand on his shoulder. Bro, let her go, he said quietly. Sometimes peace come after the storm, but not always with the same people. Later that afternoon, the cast began packing. Bags thudded against the floor. Zippers zipped. Producers whispered about flights. Kendra stayed upstairs, quietly folding her things. Mimi stopped by to hug her goodbye. You sure you're ready to leave it like this? She asked. Kendra nodded. If I stay, I'll lose myself again. Meanwhile, outside by the van, Kirk talked to Jock and Scrappy one last time. I ain't mad anymore, Kirk said. I'm just tired. Jock nodded. Tired means you finally see the cost. Kirk looked toward the villa. Yeah, cost everything. The drive to the airport was long and wordless. Rain hit the windshield in slow drops, each one echoing the silence inside the car. Kendra looked out the window, the island fading behind her. Kirk rode in a separate vehicle, eyes closed, headphones in but no music playing. When the crew arrived at the airport, fans were already waiting. Cameras flashed. People shouted questions. Kirk, is it true you cheated? Kendra, are you leaving him for good? Jock, are y'all still friends? Nobody answered. They just walked past, surrounded by chaos they had created but no longer controlled. Back in Atlanta, days later, the episode aired. The ratings shattered records. Fans called it the most dramatic love and hip-hop moment in years. Reaction videos flooded the internet. Everyone had an opinion, but nobody had the truth. Some said Kirk looked broken. Others said Kendra finally found her strength. A few said Jock was the only one with sense. For Kirk, the noise meant nothing. He sat alone in his studio, the lights dim, watching the footage on repeat. The moment Kendra walked away played over and over until he finally shut the laptop. He took out his notebook again and wrote, sometimes, the apology don't fix it. Sometimes it's just proof you finally understood why it broke. Outside, rain began to fall again, light and steady. His phone buzzed once. A text from an unknown number read, you can still make it right if you stop hiding. He stared at it for a long time before typing back, who is this? But no reply came. Across town, Kendra was sitting with Erica, sipping tea and scrolling through messages. You see how they spin in it? She asked. They got headlines saying I left him for Jock. That's not even true. Erica shook her head. Truth don't sell. Pain do. Kendra smiled faintly. Guess we gave them both. And somewhere else, Jock was on set for a radio interview, trying to laugh it off. Man, Puerto Rico was wild, he said into the mic. But that's family. Messy family, but still family? The host grinned. So you and Kirk cool again? Jock paused, looking down before answering. Cool enough to wish him peace. Back at Kirk's studio, thunder rolled softly in the distance. He closed his notebook, stood up, and turned off the lights. For the first time in days, he felt something close to calm. Outside, the rain stopped. The city lights reflected on wet pavement, quiet and endless. And though no one said it out loud, everyone knew Puerto Rico had changed them all. The cameras might stop rolling, but the story wasn't done. Not yet. 2 days later, Atlanta was a furnace of speculation. The press conference had been meant to calm the storm, but instead it cracked open a new fault line. The messages Corey leaked hit the internet like an earthquake. Screenshots flooded every timeline. Supposed texts between Tamar and a music producer named Darius Grant, suggesting backdoor deals, secret payments, and personal confessions. Though the messages were blurry and half-redacted, they were enough to set the gossip cycle ablaze. Headlines screamed, Tamar's secret partner exposed. And did Yandy know the full story? In her apartment, Tamar sat at her kitchen counter, scrolling through the chaos, numb. Tony walked in holding 2 coffees. I told you this man wasn't done, she said. Tamar's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. They're fake, Tony. I never texted Darius about any of this. Tony sighed. I know that, but the world doesn't. And you know how fast lies travel. Tamar looked up, her face tight with frustration. How do you fight someone who controls the narrative? Meanwhile, Yandy and Mendeecees were in their living room again, watching the coverage unfold on TV. This guy's trying to make her look shady, Yandy said quietly. And by connection, he's dragging us back into it. Mendeecees rubbed his forehead. It's not just about shade anymore. He's trying to destroy reputations. If people think Tamar's dishonest, everything she said about him loses credibility. Yandy nodded. So what do we do? Sit and watch. Mendeecees turned to her. No, we fight fire with truth. He grabbed his phone and called Mona. Set up a private meeting. I've got an idea. That night, they gathered in a small recording studio. Tamar, Yandy, Mendeecees, Mona, and a handful of trusted friends. The energy in the room was heavy, like everyone knew they were standing at the edge of something irreversible. Mona started the conversation. Corey's not just leaking stories. He's creating them. He has contacts in every gossip outlet and people on payrolls we can't see. Tamar leaned forward, her voice low. Then we find one of his people and flip them. Mona raised an eyebrow. You think someone in his circle will talk? Everyone talks, Tamar said. You just have to hit the right nerve. For hours by midnight, they had a plant race. Corey's assistant, a woman named Tasha, who had been his right hand for years. She handled his emails, his payments, his scheduling. If anyone knew where the bodies were buried, it was her. 2 days later, Mona tracked Tasha down at a small cafe in Buckhead. She approached her quietly, sliding into the booth across from her. You don't know me, Mona said, but I know you've been working for Corey Miles. Tasha froze, eyes darting around the cafe. I don't know what you're talking about. Mona smiled softly. I'm not here to expose you. I'm here to give you a way out. Tasha hesitated. Why would I need a way out? Because he's going to throw you under the bus when this blows up, Mona said simply. He's the kind of man who burns everyone around him when the fire gets too hot. You've seen it before. Tasha looked down, silent for a moment. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, You don't know half of what he's done. Mona leaned closer. Then tell me. That conversation would change everything. By the time Mona left the cafe, she had recordings, documents, and emails showing that Corey had not only leaked the footage but had also faked contracts, spliced audio, and bribed employees at 2 major gossip sites to keep the stories alive. The next morning, Mona showed everything to Tamar and Yandy. We've got him, she said. Tamar's jaw clenched. Then let's make him pay. Yandy, however, hesitated. We should be careful. If we move too fast, he'll spin this again and make it look like we're attacking him to cover something up. Tamar crossed her arms. You're saying we should wait? I'm saying we should be smart, Yandy replied. We drop the truth the way he dropped the lies, slow, calculated, undeniable. So they began their quiet counterattack. One by one, they released snippets of proof emails from Corey's company showing payouts to blog owners, text threads between him and his assistant, even receipts for fake video edits. The internet began to shift. Fans started asking questions. Wait, so Corey set all this up? Was everything fake? But Corey wasn't backing down. Within hours of their first post, he went live from his penthouse, smirking into the camera. You really think I'm the villain? He said. Everything I released was real. Those women are just mad they got caught. He waved a stack of papers toward the screen. I have more proof receipts you wouldn't believe. Keep watching. Tamar saw it and laughed bitterly. He's not scared. He's loving this. Yandy replied. That's what people like him do. They thrive on chaos. Later that night, Mona's phone buzzed. It was Tasha. Her voice was trembling. He knows I talked to you, she said. He's threatening me. I have to leave the city. Mona's heart pounded. Where are you? Tasha whispered. At my apartment. But he sent someone to watch me. The call went dead. Panic rippled through the group. Mendeecees immediately started making calls, trying to get security to check on her. When they arrived, the apartment was empty. Tasha was gone. Her phone left behind on the kitchen counter. The next morning, the news broke. Tasha had been found outside the city limits, shaken but alive. She told police she'd been followed, forced off the road, and warned to keep her mouth shut. The story hit the media within hours. And suddenly Corey wasn't just a gossip broker, he was the villain in a real-life scandal. Tamar and Yandy met again at Mona's office. This just got dangerous, Yandy said quietly. This isn't about headlines anymore. Tamar nodded, eyes cold. He wants to play dirty. Fine. I grew up in this industry. I know how to survive. By evening, Tamar went live again, this time alone. Her tone was calm, but her words were sharp. To the man who's been trying to destroy Mew, failed. To everyone who's believed every lie, you'll see the truth soon enough. And when it comes out, remember who stood tall through the storm. The comments section exploded, millions watching, dissecting every syllable. The next day, the FBI confirmed they were investigating digital manipulation and fraud tied to Corey's company. Though no arrests were made yet, the pressure was mounting. Yandy and Tamar, once enemies, now appeared side by side again on morning shows, calmly recounting their experience. "We didn't deserve this," Yandy said. "But maybe something good will come of it. Maybe people will start questioning the lies they're fed every day." But even as they spoke, somewhere far from the cameras, Corey packed a suitcase. His assistant's betrayal had cost him everything. Still, he wasn't finished. As he zipped the bag shut, he muttered to himself, "They think they won, but they don't know what I've still got." He opened his laptop, scrolling through one last folder marked Final Phase. Inside were files labeled with both their names, Tamar and Yandy, each containing more than gossip, more than scandal. They contained private footage, conversations, and deals that could ruin them both if released. Corey smiled faintly. "Round 2, he whispered. And the screen flickered in the dark as he hit upload. By dawn, the uploads were everywhere. Half a dozen anonymous accounts on every major platform began releasing exclusive inside footage from Tamar and Yandy's private lives. Clips from dressing rooms, audio from voice memos, even old behind-the-scenes material from reality shoots, some real, some edited. The internet feasted on it. Headlines screamed betrayal, scandal, secret confessions. The noise was deafening. Tamar woke to her phone buzzing nonstop. She blinked against the light, saw her name trending again, and felt her stomach drop. "Oh, not again," she whispered. Tony burst into the room, holding her own phone. "Tamar, don't look at it." Tamar sat up. "What now?" Tony shook her head. "He leaked everything, old footage, private conversations. It's all out there." Tamar snatched the phone and scrolled, her breath catching when she saw a video labeled Tamar Backstage Meltdown. She pressed play. The screen showed her crying after a performance, her voice breaking as she said, "They all use me until there's nothing left." The comment section was merciless. Across town, Yandy sat at her kitchen table in silence. The same clips filled her feed, moments from years ago, twisted into something ugly. One showed her yelling at a producer, another spliced together to make it seem like she'd mocked Tamar after the hospital incident. Mendeecees stood behind her, reading the captions over her shoulder. "They're tearing you apart," he said softly. "They don't care what's real anymore." Yandy rubbed her temples. "This isn't about truth, it's about humiliation." Mona called both women within the hour. "We need to get ahead of this," she said firmly. "Corey's burning every bridge he has left. This is his last strike." Tamar's voice shook. "How many more hits do we take before it's over?" Mona replied, "Until we make sure he can't hurt anyone again." They met that evening, at the studio once more, their faces drawn with exhaustion but fire still in their eyes. Mona laid out what her team had discovered. "Corey's uploads are coming from overseas servers. He's gone underground. But we traced a payment he made yesterday to an account in his name, in London. If we can connect that to the leaks, we can end this legally." Yandy leaned forward. "So we take him down international. Let him run, he can't hide forever." Tamar, her voice low but steady, said, "No more waiting. No more lives, no more spin. We release everything. The receipts, the contracts, the threats. The world needs to see what this man did." By midnight, they posted a joint video. No makeup, no filters, just raw honesty. Tamar spoke first, her tone weary but fierce. "For weeks, we've been attacked, lied about, manipulated, and used. This isn't entertainment, it's cruelty. We've been filmed without consent, edited, and sold like a storyline. But the truth is simple. We were victims of someone who saw us as profit." Yandy continued, "And now, we're taking our power back. We've handed every piece of evidence to the authorities. This isn't drama, it's justice." The video went viral instantly. Comments poured in from fans, celebrities, and even journalists apologizing for spreading false stories. One tweet read, "Seeing Tamar and Yandy stand together after everything." Another said, "This should make us rethink how we consume gossip." But amid the wave of support, Corey's followers fought back, claiming the women were lying again. Corey, hiding in a hotel overseas, watched from his laptop, fury building behind his smirk. "They think they can shame me," he muttered. "They built their fame on drama, and now they want pity." He opened a new account under a fake name and started posting again screenshots, voice clips, fragments of the same chaos he'd been feeding the world. But this time, something was different. His followers were smaller. The comments questioned him. People had started to doubt the source. Back in Atlanta, the shift was palpable. Gossip blogs that had once fueled the scandal began publishing retractions. One headline read, "Former media exec accused of manufacturing celebrity feud." Another said, "Corey Miles under federal investigation." Tamar saw it on her screen and exhaled for the first time in weeks. "It's ending," she whispered. Yandy called her that night. "You seeing the news?" Tamar smiled faintly through the phone. "Yeah, I almost forgot what peace felt like." Yandy chuckled softly. "Don't speak too soon. Peace doesn't last long in our world." Tamar laughed quietly. "No, but it's something." 2 days later, Mona got the call. Corey had been detained at Heathrow Airport. He'd tried to fly to Dubai using a fake passport, but authorities matched his fingerprints. Within hours, every entertainment outlet broke the story. The headlines were thunderous. Corey Miles arrested in international fraud scandal. The clips played nonstop: his mugshot, his arrest footage, his empty office being raided. The man who had controlled their lives for weeks was finally caught. Tamar cried when she saw it. Not from joy, but from release. Tony hugged her tight. "It's over, baby. You made it." Tamar nodded slowly. "I didn't think I'd ever feel like myself again." Yandy texted her a single message. "We won." Tamar replied, "No, we survived." Over the next few days, the story began to fade from the news cycle. Fans moved on to the next scandal, the next viral clip, the next distraction. But for Tamar and Yandy, something deeper remained, a wary respect born from shared pain. They started meeting quietly, working on an idea that Mona suggested, a joint documentary, telling their story in their own words. When filming began, Tamar spoke directly to the camera. "People think celebrity life is glitter and cameras. It's not. It's pressure, judgment, and eyes watching you fall apart. But what I learned is that truth always finds its way through the lies." Yandy added, "We spent weeks fighting each other over stories someone else wrote. But in the end, we realized the real enemy wasn't each other, it was the system that profits off broken people." The documentary, titled Through the Storm, premiered 6 months later. It opened with real footage of the chaos, the shouting, the headlines, the tears, and ended with Tamar and Yandy on stage together, hosting a charity event for women in media who'd been targeted by online abuse. The audience rose to their feet in applause, not because of scandal, but because of resilience. After the event, as the crowd thinned, Tamar turned to Yandy and said quietly, "Maybe this is what it was all for." Yandy smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe we just finally learned how to write our own story." Outside, the night air felt lighter than it had in months. The cameras flashed, but this time, neither woman flinched. Somewhere far away, behind bars and headlines, Corey Miles' empire of lies had crumbled, but the echoes of his chaos lingered, a reminder of how fragile fame could be and how powerful truth could become once the noise faded. And in that quiet space, after the storm, the city of Atlanta seemed to breathe again, carrying the faint hum of redemption through its streets. At sunrise, the city seemed calm again, but it was a shallow kind of calm, the kind that comes after too much noise. The news crews had moved on, the headlines were softening, and most people had already found something new to talk about. Still, Tamar couldn't sleep. She sat at the edge of her bed, the window cracked open to the morning air, replaying everything that had happened. The sound of sirens, the glare of lights, the weeks of twisting stories. She picked up her phone, half expecting to see another message or another edit of her life turned into content. But the screen was blank. Tony came in quietly with breakfast. "You didn't eat yesterday," she said. Tamar smiled a little. "I forgot how to be normal." Tony sat beside her. "Then start with coffee. Normal starts small." Tamar laughed under her breath. "Maybe that's all I ever needed." She took a sip, watching the city come awake below, thinking about how much could change in a few months, how people you called friends could become strangers, and how strangers could turn into allies when everything collapsed. Downtown, Yandy was getting ready for an interview. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her jacket, the same calm she'd used on set now feeling like armor. Mendeecees walked in and kissed her forehead. "You ready for this?" he asked. "I've been ready," she said. This time, it's not about defending myself, it's about closing the chapter. He nodded, proud and tired. Then let's close it. The interview aired that afternoon. The host asked, after everything that's happened, what have you learned about the industry? Yandy smiled faintly. That it feeds on your pain if you let it, but it can't take your peace unless you hand it over. Later that evening, Tamar joined her at the same studio, the two of them sitting side by side again, under soft lights. There were no scripts, no cameras hiding in corners, just conversation. We spent so long fighting ghosts, Tamar said. I don't even remember who threw the first word anymore. Yandy laughed softly. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe what matters is that we stopped fighting. Tamar nodded. Yet, we stopped. The next weeks rolled by quietly. Their joint documentary grew into something bigger. Conversation about how fame distorts truth. How people forget that behind every headline there's a heart. The network wanted more, but both women insisted on one condition. No manufactured drama. If it's not real, it's not worth it, Tamar said. We've already lived enough of that. When Through the Storm finally aired, the response was different from anything either of them expected. Fans wrote messages of thanks instead of gossip. People talked about healing, about accountability, about how the internet had turned empathy into entertainment. One comment stood out to Tamar. It said, I came for the tea but stayed for the truth. She smiled at that, saved the post, and turned off her phone for the night. Months passed. Atlanta's skyline shifted with new buildings, new stories. Sometimes Tamar still caught whispers about the old feud, but they sounded smaller now, distant. She'd learned to move quietly, to sing again without the noise in her head. Yandy and Mendeecees focused on their family, rebuilding their business and reputation one steady step at a time. Mona moved on to produce new shows, always telling her teams, remember what happened last year. Real lives aren't props. One night, Tamar hosted a small event downtown, a benefit for young artists who'd been burned by bad contracts. Halfway through, she looked across the room and saw Yandy walk in. They hadn't seen each other in months. Tamar smiled, raised her glass, and said softly, look who finally showed up. Yandy laughed. You didn't think I'd miss this, did you? They hugged, cameras flashing again. But this time it wasn't chaos, it was closure. Outside, reporters waited, but when they asked about the past, Tamar just said, we learned our lesson. There's enough room in this city for all of us to shine. And that was all. No gossip, no anger, just grace. As the night ended, she stood on the balcony, the lights of the city stretching endlessly below. She thought about the hospital room, the fight, the headlines, the fear, and how it all led here to peace, finally earned. Behind her, music played softly, laughter echoing through the hall. She whispered a quiet prayer for everyone still trapped in the cycle, then closed her eyes and let the sound of the city carry her forward. The story had started with chaos and ended with stillness. But that was how real life worked. Storms came, storms passed, and if you were lucky, you learned how to stand through them. Weeks passed, and for the first time in months, the world seemed to move without their names attached to it. Atlanta had found new gossip, new headlines to chase. Tamar woke one morning to sunlight on her face, a quiet apartment, and no notifications. She stayed still for a while, just listening to the hum of the fridge, the sound of a car outside, her own breathing. Peace, fragile but real. She got up slowly, made coffee, and opened her notebook. For the first time since the chaos began, she wrote a song. No anger, no heartbreak, just release. At the same time, across town, Yandy was preparing for a community event she and Mendeecees had been planning for months. A youth mentorship program in the same neighborhood where they'd started before fame. Kids lined up with notebooks and wide eyes, their laughter filling the space. Mendeecees whispered to her, this feels like a reset. Yandy nodded. It is. This is where we were meant to end up. But even as life settled into rhythm, the past had a way of echoing. Mona called Tamar, late one afternoon. You might want to see this, she said. Tamar frowned. What now? Mona sighed. The trial date for Corey's case has been set. Silence hung between them. Tamar finally asked, do I have to go? You don't have to, Mona said, but I think you should. It's not about revenge. It's about closure. On the morning of the hearing, the courthouse buzzed with quiet energy. Reporters stood outside, cameras ready, though the frenzy had dulled. Tamar arrived in a dark coat and sunglasses, her steps measured, her face calm. Yandy joined her moments later, simple and poised. They nodded to each other without words. Inside, Corey sat at the defendant's table, thinner, restless, eyes darting. When he saw them, his smirk faltered. The prosecutor read off the charges: fraud, defamation, cyber exploitation, conspiracy. As each word echoed through the room, Tamar felt the weight of it lift from her chest. When the judge asked if she wished to make a statement, she stood. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady, "I don't want to relive what happened. I just want my name back, my peace, my dignity." She turned slightly toward Corey. "You took months of my life and turned them into spectacle. But I'm still here. And I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to move on." Yandy followed. This wasn't just about headlines. It was about manipulation. He built an empire on people's pain. We all lost something to his game. But today, we take it back. When it was over, the sentence was years in prison, fines, restitution. The courtroom murmured, the press scribbled, and Tamar exhaled. Outside, the sky was overcast but calm. Reporters tried to shout questions, but she didn't stop to answer. She and Yandy walked side by side down the courthouse steps, the noise fading behind them. That night, Tamar sat on her balcony again, watching the skyline. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Yandy. "We did it," Tamar typed back. "We finished it." Then she put her phone away and closed her eyes. For once, there was nothing left to prove. In the months that followed, both women thrived quietly. Tamar released her new single, a slow ballad titled Nothing But Truth. A song about losing yourself and finding your voice again. It climbed the charts, not because of controversy but because it resonated. Yandy launched her mentorship program officially, funding scholarships and inviting young artists to tell their own stories without fear of exploitation. The media tried a few times to drag them back into interviews about the feud that rocked Atlanta, but both refused. "We've said everything we needed to say," Tamar told one journalist. "Now it's time for the next chapter." And the next chapter was brighter. At an awards gala a year later, Tamar and Yandy presented together for the first time. Laughter filling the room as they traded playful remarks on stage. The audience loved it not because it was scandalous, but because it was human. After the show, they stood backstage in the quiet. "You ever think about how close we came to losing it all?" Yandy asked. Tamar smiled faintly. "Every day, but maybe we had to break to rebuild." Outside, the night stretched over Atlanta like a sigh of relief. The city lights shimmered, the hum of traffic steady. There would always be noise, always cameras, always stories. But for Tamar and Yandy, the chaos had finally served its purpose. It had taught them how to stand in their own light, no matter who tried to dim it. And somewhere far away, behind prison walls, Corey Miles watched an old news clip of the two women smiling on stage. His face was unreadable. After a long pause, he whispered, "They were never supposed to win." But outside his cell window, the world moved on without him, the noise fading into memory. Back in the city, Tamar's voice floated through a studio mic, soft but strong. "Every lie ends. Every truth rises." And as the recording light glowed red, Atlanta listened, not in scandal, but in silence, the kind that meant the story was truly, finally over. A few months later, the rhythm of ordinary life began to take hold. The world had long since turned its attention to newer dramas, and the names that once filled every headline now appeared only in stories of resilience and rebirth. Atlanta felt different, somehow quieter, humbler, as if it too had taken a deep breath and learned to exhale. Tamar had moved into a smaller home outside the city, surrounded by trees and long quiet mornings. She liked the stillness, the way it didn't demand anything of her. She wrote in the mornings, cooked for herself, walked her dog, and left her phone in another room. Tony visited often, usually unannounced, always bringing the kind of laughter that reminded her what peace sounded like. Sometimes they sat on the porch for hours without speaking, just sipping coffee, the wind moving softly through the branches. One morning, Tamar received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a short handwritten note that read, "Truth doesn't need an audience." She smiled faintly, knowing exactly who had sent it. Yandy's world was steady again too. Though in a different way. Her mentorship program had expanded to 3 cities, and she'd started working with schools to teach young creators how to protect their work. The kids adored her energy, her honesty, her willingness to admit mistakes. Sometimes she would show them clips from her old shows, laughing as they gasped at her hairstyles or outfits. "Don't believe everything you see," she'd tell them. "The camera loves a story, but it doesn't always love the truth." Mendeecees stood proudly beside her at every event, their partnership rebuilt, stronger for the wreckage they'd survived. "You turned pain into purpose," he told her once, and she believed him. That summer, Tamar and Yandy met again for the first time in months. No cameras, no agents, just a small cafe tucked away on Peachtree Street. When Yandy walked in, Tamar looked up from her notebook and grinned. "You're late," she said. Yandy laughed, sitting down. I was being followed by gratitude. It slows you down. They both laughed until the waiter gave them a strange look, and for a moment, it felt like none of it had ever happened. The hospital, the screaming, the betrayal, the headlines, just two women who had learned how to survive the storm. You know what I keep thinking about, Yandy said, stirring her tea. How fast people move on. One minute they're tearing you apart. The next they're sending hearts and prayers. Tamar nodded. The world's addicted to noise. But peace, it's quiet. People don't know what to do with quiet. You still writing? Yandy asked. Tamar smiled. Every day. But I'm not writing about the pain anymore. I'm writing about what comes after. She looked up. You building, Yandy said simply. Brick by brick. Maybe we lost control of the story for a while, but we've got it back now. They clinked their glasses together. No toast, no speeches, just understanding. By autumn, Through the Storm had been nominated for several awards. Critics praised its raw honesty, its refusal to dramatize the already dramatic. During the ceremony, when Tamar's name was called to accept, she stood there for a long moment before speaking. For a while, I thought the world only loved me when I was broken, she said. But then I realized, healing is a better story. The room erupted in applause, and when she looked down from the stage, Yandy was smiling through tears. Afterward, backstage, they hugged for a long time. You did that, Yandy whispered. We did that, Tamar replied. In the months that followed, they rarely saw each other but always stayed connected. A voice note here, a photo there, an unspoken promise that no one would ever turn them against each other again. One rainy evening, Tamar sat at her piano, humming the melody of a new song. She pressed record and began to sing soft, low, honest. The lyrics told a story about friendship, forgiveness, and how sometimes the people who hurt you end up saving you too. As her voice filled the room, she felt something inside her finally settle. The next morning, she sent a short clip of the song to Yandy. A few minutes later, a reply came. You should call it After the Noise. Tamar smiled. Perfect, she typed back. Weeks later, when the song was released, it didn't just top charts, it touched people. No auto-tune, no polish, just truth. Fans flooded her page with messages about letting go, moving on, starting over. She didn't need to explain what the song was about. Everyone already knew. The last scene of their story didn't happen on a red carpet or a TV set. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon when Yandy visited Tamar's house. They sat outside on the porch again, the sun low, the air warm. They talked about their kids, their work, their peace. Tamar looked out at the trees and said, You ever think about how different it all could have been? Yandy nodded slowly. Yeah, but if it hadn't happened, maybe we'd still be pretending. Maybe this is what it took to finally be real. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sound of cicadas, the hum of life moving on. In the distance, Atlanta's skyline shimmered under the fading light. Somewhere, someone was telling another story, chasing another headline, feeding another fire. But for Tamar and Yandy, the storm had passed. There would always be whispers, always curiosity, but none of it mattered anymore. They had found their peace, not the fragile kind that comes from silence, but the steady kind that comes from truth. And, as the evening settled around them, Tamar picked up her notebook again and wrote a single line across the page. We were the story once, but now we're the lesson. Months slipped by like quiet pages turning, each one softer than the last. Atlanta was warm again, the city alive with new music, new lights, and new names filling its gossip columns. Tamar's life, for once, wasn't among them. She'd learned to enjoy that silence, the kind that used to make her restless but now felt like home. Every morning she rose before dawn, poured herself a cup of coffee, and sat by her window while the world was still gray. She didn't check her phone anymore when she woke. She wrote instead. The new album came together slowly, every song a step farther from pain. She titled it After the Noise, just as Yandy had suggested. It wasn't meant to be a comeback. It was a declaration, soft, clear, no shade, no cryptic lines, just stories of endurance, grace, and what it meant to find yourself again after everyone thought they'd already written your ending. Yandy was thriving in her own way. Her mentorship foundation had grown beyond what she imagined, part community center, part creative hub, full of kids who reminded her why she loved the grind in the first place. She had learned to balance ambition with stillness, to say no when things didn't feel right, to measure success in peace instead of profit. Mendeecees often joked, you went from headlines to headliner of hope, and she'd just roll her eyes and laugh. One Sunday afternoon, Mona organized a private gathering at a small theater downtown. No press, no streaming, just a screening for friends, family, and the people who'd lived through it all. It was a short film, a quiet epilogue to Through the Storm, capturing moments from the aftermath, the laughter, the rebuilding, the soft spaces where healing had taken root. Tamar sat in the back row, watching herself on screen, seeing the version of her that had survived. She glanced at Yandy a few seats over, both of them illuminated by the flicker of light. They Kodiak, others gazed for just a second, smiled, then turned back to the screen. No words were needed. Afterward, the small crowd lingered outside under the soft glow of streetlights. Mona hugged them both. You two changed the way people look at these stories, she said. It used to be about who fell apart. Now it's about who stood up. Tamar chuckled. Well, we gave them enough material. Yandy grinned. Yeah, but at least this time, we wrote it ourselves. A few nights later, Tamar sat alone in her studio, working on the final track for her album. The room was dark except for the light from the console, the hum of the speakers steady. She closed her eyes and whispered into the mic. This is how peace sounds. The song began slowly, just piano and voice, each note fragile but sure. She recorded it in one take. When it ended, she didn't replay it. She just sat there in the silence that followed, breathing. Meanwhile, across town, Yandy was closing up the community center. The last few kids waved goodbye, their laughter echoing down the hallway. She locked the doors and leaned against the wall, smiling to herself. The quiet didn't scare her anymore. She'd learned to love it. Later that week, Tamar invited her over for dinner. It wasn't planned, just a text that said, "Come eat." When Yandy arrived, the table was simple, the food home-cooked. They talked about nothing and everything, like old friends who had finally found their way back to something familiar. After the meal, they sat on the porch again, the same one where so many hard conversations had begun. You ever miss it? Yandy asked. The rush? The lights? The drama? Tamar laughed. No. I miss believing it meant something, but not the noise itself. Same, Yandy said softly. Sometimes I think the fame part was the price we paid for the lessons. Then we got our money's worth. Tamar replied with a grin. They both laughed. That easy. Deep laughter that comes only after survival. A breeze moved through the trees. The sky was streaked with purple and gold, the air thick with summer. From somewhere down the block came the faint hum of music, someone's car radio playing one of Tamar's old songs. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Yandy said, "We made it through." Tamar nodded. Yeah, and not everybody does. She stood, stretched, and looked out toward the skyline. The lights were coming on one by one, tiny reminders that the world never really stopped spinning, even when it felt like it had. She turned back to Yandy. You know, I used to think the worst thing that could happen was losing control of the story. Now I think the best thing that ever happened was realizing it didn't matter. Yandy smiled. That's growth. Tamar tilted her head. That's freedom. The night deepened, and the conversation faded into comfortable quiet. Inside the house, the kettle whistled. Tamar went to pour 2 cups of tea while Yandy hummed softly to herself. A tune she didn't realize was the same melody Tamar had recorded days before. When Tamar handed her the cup, she said, "You know, I think we're finally done being the story." Yandy took a sip, eyes shining. Good, let somebody else carry the mess for a while. Tamar laughed, leaned back in her chair, and looked up at the stars breaking through the dark. Amen to that. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt watched, or judged, or used. They were just 2 women, sitting in the quiet, their lives finally their own again. Somewhere in the distance, a faint echo of sirens drifted through the city, the kind of sound that once meant chaos. But tonight, it faded quickly into the wind. The storm had passed for good. The next morning broke clean and gold. Sunlight cut through the blinds of Tamar's studio, lighting up dust motes that floated like slow confetti. She hadn't planned to be awake this early, but the quiet had a pull she couldn't resist anymore. The city still slept, and for a few soft minutes, there was nothing but the hum of the air conditioner and the faint vibration of life outside. She sat at her piano, fingers hovering, unsure what to play. Then, almost without thinking, she began to hum. It wasn't a song from her album, it wasn't even a melody she recognized. It was something new, light and wordless. She laughed at herself, pressing record anyway. When she finished, she saved the file with a simple name. Morning Peace. Around noon, Yandy called. You busy? She asked. Tamar smiled into the phone. Depends who's asking. Me. The woman who's been up since 7 because my husband tried to make breakfast and nearly burned the kitchen. Tamar laughed so loud she nearly dropped the phone. Tell him I said stick to what he knows. Please, Yandy said. I told him if he wants to impress me, he can paint the living room instead. They laughed until the sound carried between them like an old rhythm. Listen, Yandy said after a pause. The network wants to do a reunion special for Through the Storm. Just a 1-hour thing. They said we could produce it ourselves this time, full control. Tamar hesitated. You really want to step back in front of cameras? Not for drama, Yandy said. For closure. To show what growth looks like. Tamar thought for a long moment, tapping the edge of the table. If we do it, we tell it our way. No music cues. No tears for ratings. Deal, Yandy said. 2 weeks later, they were back on set, but this time it felt different. No audience. No producers shouting over walkie-talkies. No staged arguments. Just 2 chairs, 1 camera, and a quiet room filled with history. They didn't script a word. They talked about fear, forgiveness, and fame, the kind that takes everything before you even know what you've given up. When it aired, it wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was honest. The world watched 2 women who had been torn apart by spectacles sit side by side. Whole comments flooded in, not gossip, but gratitude. This is what healing looks like. Thank you for showing that growth isn't boring. The special ended with a still frame of them laughing, unguarded. The credits rolling beneath the sound of their voices overlapping. After it aired, Mona called them both. I just want you to know, she said. What you did tonight changed something. People are tired of fake. They needed this. Tamar smiled. Maybe we did too. That night, Tamar couldn't sleep again. She went out to her porch, mug in hand, and looked up at the sky. It was full of stars, sharp and clear against the darkness. She thought of everything that had happened. The fight, the hospital, the lies, the chaos. How it all led here, to quiet redemption. Her phone buzzed once. A text from Yandy. We're good, right? Tamar smiled and typed back. Better than good. In another part of the city, Yandy sat in her living room, her kids asleep upstairs. Mendeecees snoring softly beside her on the couch. She turned off the TV, leaned back, and let the silence stretch. She realized it didn't scare her anymore. It sounded like peace. Months later, the 2 of them stood together again, this time at a charity gala, both presenting an award for community work. The applause was polite, warm, genuine. When the event ended, they walked outside into the cool night air, heels clicking against the pavement. We keep finding our way back to stages, Yandy said, smiling. Yeah, Tamar replied. But this time we're the ones holding the mic. They stood there for a moment, watching the cars move slowly down Peachtree, their reflections stretching in the glass buildings above. The city hummed beneath them, still alive, still restless, but somehow softer now. You think people ever really stop talking? Yandy asked. No, Tamar said, but I think we stop listening. Good, Yandy said. Because I'm done listening to noise. Me too, Tamar said. They hugged, simple and real. When they parted, Tamar walked toward her car, glancing back once to see Yandy waving before disappearing into the night. She smiled, knowing some stories don't end, they just fade into peace. That night, before bed, she played the recording she'd made weeks earlier, Morning Peace. Soft notes filled the room, rising and falling like breath. She closed her eyes, let it wash over her, and whispered, thank you. Outside, Atlanta glowed under the quiet sky, its restless heart finally slowing. And somewhere, tucked between memory and forgiveness, the last echoes of their storm settled into stillness. The city had moved on. So had they. And for the first time in a long time, there was nothing left to survive, only to live. So now, after everything you've seen, after every twist, every lie, every betrayal, every secret that tore through the lives of Tamar Braxton, Yandy Smith Harris and Mendeecees, it's your turn to step into the story. Yes, you. Because this isn't just a tale of celebrities clashing under the bright lights of Atlanta, it's a reflection of every single one of us who's ever been pushed, manipulated, or misunderstood, and the courage it takes to rise above it. You've watched the chaos unfold. You've seen trust broken, families tested, careers threatened, and hearts laid bare to the world. Now think about how you'd react if it were your life splashed across headlines and social media feeds before you could even catch your breath. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you think about everything that's happened. Do you believe Tamar was justified in confronting Yandy and Mendeecees that night? Was Yandy right to defend herself? Or did she overstep? How much blame falls on Corey Miles, the man orchestrating lies from behind the shadows, profiting off the pain of others? These are not simple questions. The truth is messy, emotions ran high, loyalties were tested, and the world watched, often choosing sides based on fragments of truth, half-cut videos, and rumors that spread faster than wildfire. Imagine yourself in Tamar's shoes. You're at a gala, smiling for cameras. The world believing you're poised and in control. And then suddenly a private betrayal explodes in the middle of the night. Your business deals vanish, your friends' loyalty wavers, and the very people you trusted the most are pulled into a narrative you didn't write. Your fans are shocked, your family is divided, and you're rushed to a hospital as emotions and chaos collide. Would you fight back? Or would you retreat? Would you forgive, or would you expose the truth in front of the world? Now, consider Yandy's position. She's defending herself, trying to maintain dignity, protect her husband, and navigate the public eye while being accused of things she didn't do. How would you feel, knowing that every move you make is being recorded, analyzed, and judged by millions? Your private life, your reactions, your words, all twisted into headlines that paint a version of you that isn't real. Could you stay calm, or would you explode? How do you reconcile defending yourself while maintaining the grace and strength people expect from you? And then there's Mendeecees, caught in the middle of a storm he didn't start but couldn't escape. Loyalty, love, responsibility all weighing on his shoulders as he tries to mediate, protect, and survive alongside the people he cares about most. Could you stay neutral when every choice is a statement? Every silence a betrayal, every word scrutinized by the public and the press. This story isn't over, and it might never be completely over, because life doesn't follow a script, and neither do people. There are still unanswered questions. Who else was involved? Who will step forward next? What other secrets have yet to surface? Tamar, Yandy and Mendeecees have survived. They've fought back, they've reclaimed their narrative, but the ripple effect of this drama will echo for months, maybe years, as fans, critics, and media outlets continue to analyze, speculate, and debate. And that's where you come in. We want you to become part of this conversation. Comment below with your thoughts. Share your opinions about the choices made, the mistakes, the moments of courage, and the decisions that changed everything. Do you think Tamar should have confronted Yandy publicly, or kept it private? Was Yandy's reaction justified, or could she have handled it differently? How do you feel about Corey Miles and the lengths he went to manipulate the story? Should justice be served differently, or is the outcome fair? Your voice matters. This is more than gossip. It's about understanding human emotion, choices under pressure, and the resilience it takes to reclaim your life after chaos. While you're thinking about that, take a moment to reflect on what this drama teaches us all. Fame is fragile, trust is fragile, and the public eye can be both a blessing and a curse. We watch, we judge, we comment, but none of us fully understand the weight these celebrities carry behind the glamour. We see the fight, we see the tears, we see the headlines, but do we see the long nights, the fear, the quiet moments when someone questions themselves, when doubt creeps in, when you wonder if you'll ever get your name and your peace back? So when you hit that comment box, don't just say what you think. Think about how you'd survive in that storm. Think about what you'd risk to protect your truth, your family, your career, your dignity. Do you forgive? Do you fight? Do you walk away? Or do you face it head-on? These questions are for you as much as they are for Tamar and Yandy. Your perspective helps the conversation, fuels the debate, and reminds everyone that stories, no matter how dramatic, reflect real struggles and real triumphs. And while you're at it, make sure you hit that like button, not just because it's polite, but because it tells us you care about the story being told in its full complexity, about the human drama behind the glitz and glamour, and about the courage it takes to face the world when every eye is on you. Every like boosts the reach of this story, ensuring that more people can witness, debate, and learn from the trials and triumphs of these Atlanta icons. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, because the drama isn't just past tense, it's ongoing. We'll bring updates, behind-the-scenes insights, legal developments, and exclusive commentary about Tamar Braxton, Yandy Smith-Harris, and Mendeecees. Don't miss a single moment, because in this world, the line between survival and spectacle is razor-thin, and every day brings a new twist, a new revelation, a new angle on a story that has already shocked the world. And share this video with your friends, your family, anyone who loves drama, resilience, and the human stories behind the headlines. Spark discussions, debate theories, and watch as people grapple with the same questions you've been asking yourself. What would I do if my life became entertainment? How far would I go to reclaim my story? How would I protect the ones I love while navigating betrayal, lies, and public scrutiny? Don't just watch, participate. Don't just like, think. Don't just scroll. Engage, because this isn't just another viral story. It's a study in power, trust, betrayal, and redemption. It's a story that proves, even in the loudest chaos, truth can prevail if you're willing to fight for it. It's proof that Tamar, Yandy and Mendeecees are more than just names on a screen. They are humans who survived a storm that many would have crumbled under. And now they stand, stronger, wiser, and unbroken. So comment below, share your thoughts, debate your theories, ask your questions. Join this community of viewers who refuse to be passive, who refuse to swallow narratives whole, and who demand the full story, because stories like this turbulent, messy, sensational does engagement, reflection, and participation. And finally, remember this. Behind every headline, behind every viral clip, behind every chaotic night and public fight, there are real people, real choices, real consequences. Respect that, learn from it, carry it forward, engage with it, because the next time the world turns its attention to drama, gossip, and spectacle, you'll know exactly how to separate the truth from the noise, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be ready to stand through your own storm, unshaken, unbroken, and whole. Hit like, subscribe, comment, and share. Let the conversation continue. Let your voice be heard. Be part of the story. Tamar and Yandy, Mendeecees. The names might fade. The headlines might change. But the lessons, the courage, and the truth, those last forever. Are you ready? Because the story isn't over until you say it is.